Today is Palm Sunday, the day that Jesus rode to Jerusalem. It was his last trip there, and he was going to be crucified. And he knew it. He knew what he was heading for. Every Israelite had to go to Jerusalem for certain celebrations. They are mentioned, not yet there. Don't go there yet. Every Israelite had to go to Jerusalem for certain feasts they were ordered in the Old Testament. And Passover was one of them. And Passover celebrates the leaving Egypt. We have gone over that. We have talked about that when we went through Exodus. So everyone is gathering in Jerusalem. There are many, many people. Jerusalem is full. And so did Jesus and his disciples. So let's read the story. Now, change the slide. In Matthew 21, as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, whatever that is, on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her side. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away." Next slide. So there's a filly and her colt, not tied, but just give you the idea of what is a donkey. If no one knows, well, you know. Next slide. This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. "Say, your daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey." Next. The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. Next. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna," next, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." Next. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city, remember, it was packed full. The whole city stirred and asked, "Who is this?" Some had come from far. Maybe they hadn't heard about Jesus, but by that time they did. The crowds answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." If you remember, when I was teaching about Moses striking the rock in the Numbers series, you can check it out from the YouTube channel. God's word, at least that's how I understand it, has many layers. You can understand the story. You can understand the meaning of the story. The events and words, even the letters may kind of tell the story. There are parables and symbols that God uses to convey his message. Like in that story, the rock that Moses struck was a symbol of Christ being stricken on the cross. But you always have to be careful how you understand the symbols in the Bible. You might get it wrong. How people understood the symbols in biblical time might be just very, very different from how we understand them now. We have one good source, though. The Bible. I believe that the Bible explains itself, and you can always find the answer from the Bible. I'm pretty confident to say always, but anyway. So when interpreting biblical symbols, we need to go and find the explanation from the Bible itself. Another thing I believe in is that there is nothing in the Bible by accident. And I have been actually wondering and pondering for some time now that why a donkey? Why did Jesus ride a donkey to Jerusalem? Well, of course, the obvious reason, next slide, was the prophecy. He fulfilled the prophecy in Zechariah, which we already read in call as call to worship. Let's look at that. So, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly, and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim. Is that the next slide? Yes, good. And the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. So, of course, Jesus rode to Jerusalem on a donkey because it was prophesied. But still, why a donkey? Why not a horse? Or a camel? Or an ox? Or what did they use back then? Or why didn't he just walk? He walked all over the place. Why did he ride to Jerusalem on a donkey? And as I said, I believe there is nothing in the Bible by accident. So there has to be a reason it was a donkey. Let's try to find out. What does the donkey tell us? What is it a symbol of? Well, if you think of a donkey, what comes to your mind now? What is it? What is it a symbol of? Next slide. It's stupid. It's dumb. Donkeys are dumb. If you call someone a donkey, you mean that they're dumb or they're stubborn. Is that what it is? Does this mean that when Jesus was stupid and stubborn to go to his death, to go to Jerusalem in the first place? Of course not. So we have to go to the Bible to try to find out what is a donkey. What did it symbolize? What did it mean to the Israelites at the time? So let's see some verses from the Bible. Next slide. Beast of burden. Donkeys were very commonly used as beasts of burden. They carried things. You can read that in many places, people loading stuff on donkeys. And here is just one from 1 Samuel. Some of you may recognize the story. It's about David and Nabal and Nabal's wife, Abigail. So Abigail here acted quickly. She took this and that and whatnot. I'm not reading the whole thing. Lots of stuff and loaded them on donkeys. So beast of burden. She carried stuff, lots of stuff on donkeys. Donkeys were also used to plow the fields. So it was a very practical animal. Next. Donkeys were used for riding. Of course, stuff and riding. You could do them separately or together. You could ride on a donkey full of stuff. If you could not afford a donkey, you would walk. But owning a donkey was not like for us owning like Alfa Romeo or BWM or something, Rolls-Royce or something very expensive. Maybe it would have been like a Skoda or a Fiat, something quite affordable for many, but not all. Donkeys in themselves, they are very humble animal. They settle for very little. They can carry a lot, and they are very useful, and yet they don't need much. They can eat grass and hay, but they can as well settle for thistle and thorny bushes. Everything goes. They are not picky. They eat. So it's easy for even the not so well off people to kind of take care of their donkeys. Just go out and have them eat the bushes along the roads or something. But donkeys were not just for the common man. It was not at all humiliating for the high-ranking people to ride on a donkey. For example, judges rode donkeys. Next slide. In Judges 12, tells about this Abdon, the son of Hillel, in whatever that place is. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it. Judged Israel after him. So is judge after judge after judge. And this Abdon had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode 70 donkeys. So each of these judges and judges' sons and grandsons had a donkey. And he judged Israel for 8 years. At one point, before the kings, judges ruled Israel. So they were very high-ranking people. Kind of like kings, but high-ranking anyway, judges. And prophets. Next slide. You may remember Balaam. We talked about him when we talked about in the Numbers series. He was riding a donkey, and that donkey even spoke to him. You remember that guy? Well, he was not really a prophet after God's mind, but he was considered as a prophet by Balak, the king of Moab, who summoned him to curse the Israelites. So he was a prophet. He was riding a donkey. A high-ranking person, very valued person, riding a donkey. Next. Here's another prophet. No, not next, but this is the one. So here is another prophet from 1 Kings 13. Now there was a certain old prophet living in Bethel, whose sons came and told him that all that the man of God, there was another prophet who prophesied to, what the man of God had done. So he said to his son, so the prophet, certain old prophet said to his son, saddle the donkey for me. And when they had saddled the donkey for him, he mounted it and rode after the man of God. So prophets rode not monkeys, but donkeys. Sorry about that. Whoops. Just checking that you are awake. Okay, next slide. Kings rode donkeys. From the 2 Samuel 13, we can read of the story of David, Absalom, and Solomon. Absalom had declared himself king of Israel before David was even dead. David had already said that, okay, Solomon will be my heir and king after me. But Absalom wanted to become the king. And when Absalom's plot was made known to David, he gave specific instructions how to ensure and show all the people, show everyone that the kingship goes to Solomon. And what did he do? The king said to them in 1 King 1, take our Lord's servants with you and have Solomon, my son, mount my own mule and take him down to Gihon. There have Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him king over Israel. Blow the trumpet and shout, long live King Solomon. In Hebrew, there are many words explaining there are many words for donkeys, different kinds of donkeys. There is a word for a female donkey and a male donkey, and different words for domestic donkeys and wild donkeys. Actually, both were used at the time. So wild donkey was still, people used them. And then there were words for a purebred donkey and a crossbred donkey. And this crossbred donkey, of course, being the mule. So it was still a donkey, considered a donkey, even though it was a crossbreed. So the mule, which is used here as David's mount, it was a sign for the chosen king. Everyone knew this was David's heir and to be king after David because he was riding David's mule, a crossbreed donkey. Actually, it was only around Solomon's time that horses began to be used. By time, horses were used more and more. They took some of the jobs that used to be used to be done by donkeys, but horses were more for the elite than donkeys, as donkeys were used both by the elite and the common man. The main difference between a donkey and a horse was war. Horses were used for military purposes. Now let's go back to Zechariah 9:9, to the prophecy of Jesus as King and Messiah. Rejoice. See, your King comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Next. So Jesus, son of David, is riding a donkey, a sign of a king. And everyone in Israel knew the story. They knew what it was about. The story of David and Solomon, both great kings. They knew it. 10. I will take away the chariots, which are, the wagons for war, chariots, war, from Ephraim, and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. No more war. And the verse 10 continues. Next. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. No more war, but peace. You saw this was actually the message also, if you noticed, in the video we saw. Conquering king and horse, and humble king on a donkey, bringing peace. So why did Jesus have to ride a donkey? This is why he couldn't ride a horse. A king riding a horse would have been a symbol for a conquering, warring king. And that was actually what the people were expecting. They wanted a victorious, conquering king who would bring back the glorious days of David and Solomon, the king that would drive Romans out of Jerusalem and, of course, Israel. But that was not why Jesus came to Jerusalem now. Later, we can see in Revelations, Jesus is riding a horse, but not now. So riding on a donkey was a sign of a king, yes, but a king that is coming in peace. I love the Old Testament pictures about Jesus. You may have noticed, I talk about them a lot. One picture is when God tells Abraham to sacrifice his only son Isaac. This is a picture of God sacrificing his own son, Jesus, his only son. Next. In Genesis, have you ever noticed that Isaac was taken to the place of his sacrifice on a donkey? When God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up, loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. There's a donkey. Of course, commonly used, but still significant. Maybe it doesn't say directly that Isaac was riding the donkey, but he was a little boy and it was a long way. So I bet he was riding the donkey. So on the loaded donkey, I'm sure Abraham, when Isaac got tired, Abraham lifted him to ride the donkey. Next. So he said, Moses, to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." And Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. Where else do we see the picture? Who was carrying wood? So as Isaac rode to his place of sacrifice, it's a picture of Jesus riding to Jerusalem on a donkey. And Isaac also carried the wood for the burnt offering on his back. It is a picture of Jesus carrying his cross in Jerusalem. It never ever ceases to amaze me and blow my mind how accurate the prophecies and the pictures in the Bible are. It's just wonderful. One more thing I want to point out. Let's go back to Matthew. So next slide. Matthew 21:9. Hosanna to the Son of David. People were shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." When Jesus is riding to Jerusalem, the crowd is shouting, "Hosanna to the highest, to the Son of David." So they all knew, they recognized the sign of the King. They recognized Jesus as the King. And they shouted, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." This is actually a quote from Psalm 118. Next slide. "O Lord, do save." Actually, Hosanna. In the New Testament, they are singing Hosanna. Hosanna can be translated help or save. Hosanna, help. Hosanna, save. As we just sang in the song, Hosanna, save us. They were maybe they were singing this, I don't know, but they were shouting it anyway. Oh Lord, do save in 118 Psalm. So Hosanna, we beseech you, O Lord, we beseech you, do send prosperity. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. That's the same line they were shouting. We have blessed you from the house of the Lord. The Lord is God, and he has given us light. Bind the festival sacrifice with cords to the horns of the altar. So they were referring to this passage when they were shouting to Jesus. So people are shouting to Jesus, Hosanna, do save. The next slide. In Finnish, we use the other word. In Finnish, we say, Oi Herra, auta. So that's the help. Auta, help, save. So different translations may use the different word. Next slide in English again. So people are quoting this psalm, and that is actually the Psalm 118, or parts of it anyway, were used as part of the sacrificial procession in the temple. When they brought the sacrificial animal to the altar, and they tied the animal to the altar's horns. So bind the festival sacrifice with cords to the horns of the altar. Part of the ritual of sacrificing animals. They used this Psalm 118 hymn as part of how they did it. And they shouted this to Jesus, who was going towards his sacrifice. He was bound to the cross with nails. So Jesus, the prophet, the judge, the priest, the king, is riding on a donkey to the place of his sacrifice, the cross, while the people around him are shouting, or maybe they were singing, the song that was used as part of the sacrificial procession in the temple. Jesus himself being the sacrifice that will be offered. So why a donkey? Jesus riding on a donkey, the judge, the prophet, the king of peace, the sacrifice for all of us.